right, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Hannah. I lead email and community at Growclass. If you're not familiar with Growclass, we're a 6-week growth marketing course and community filled with founders, marketers, entrepreneurs, helping folks learn the skills they need to grow their careers and businesses. But today I'm really excited to learn more about why and how to move to a 4-day work week with Arianne Foulks. So Arianne is a popular educator and a small business enthusiast. She's focused her career on creating online homes for fascinating people at Aeolidia.
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 It's
I
tricky.
practiced this too, and I still fumbled it. So sorry. Aeolidia. Her web and graphic design agency. She has championed designer and artisan brands for over 20 years. She and her team have launched more than 700 thoughtful redesigns and helped businesses level up. So I'm going to drop some of Arianne's links in the chat for you. You can find her website and her LinkedIn here if you want to connect. And if you have any questions for Arianne, we do have time for a Q&A at the end. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself when it's time. You can use the hand up emoji. And if you're feeling a little bit shy, you can definitely send me a private message and I'll ask the question on your behalf. A reminder that there's no such thing as a dumb question. We're all here to learn. It's a judgment-free zone, and we just ask that you keep it kind and respectful. But with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Arianne so we can learn how and why to move over to a 4-day work week. Over to you, Arianne.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to share my screen here. We should be seeing some slides. Are we looking good?
Looking good.
Okay, how and why to move to a 4-day work week. So if there's one thing I have learned during this process is that we do not waste time in meetings. Every moment is going to be important. So I'm not going to linger too long on any of these slides, but this one here is just showing a little tiny bit of the work that I do at my agency. So we run a website agency. We do development, design, branding, email marketing. This is some of the work that we've done for our clients in the last couple years, just to give you a visual for what we're doing all day. Just so you know, what my team is like, I'm going to be talking about what works for us. The 4-day week, I think, is achievable for pretty much any kind of business. From what I have heard, it's just going to be different for everyone. But just so you know, what we're looking at is that my team is all remote. So we work on Slack and in ClickUp, and we use Dropbox. So we don't have an office. We're all over the US, and I have a couple Canadians on my team. There are 9 of us who are salaried and full-time, including me. And so those are the people who are officially on the 4-day week. But when we work with all of our contractors, they're up to roughly 20-ish of us. And we just make sure that those people don't talk to our clients on our day off, just to keep things nice and clear. So this is a quote that I was keeping in mind when I was thinking about the 4-day week. So often people are working hard at the wrong thing. Working on the right thing is probably more important than working hard. So we're going to talk a little bit about productivity here, but mostly the 4-day week is about choosing what to work on, not stressing yourself out. So I also think about the 80-20 rule, and you may have heard of this, but the 80-20 rule says that 80% of your outcomes are due to 20% of your inputs. So probably 20% of what you do every day leads to 80% of what is working. So that means there's a whole 80% there that you're doing that is maybe not the most urgent thing that you can do. So we're going to talk about figuring that out. Okay, oops, my slides want to stop moving now. There we go. So I just wanted to show you how this worked for us. So what we did is, this seemed a bit daunting and we wanted some help. So we worked with 4-day Week Global, which is a nonprofit that is helping people figure out the 4-day week. And they had a team from Boston College come in and give our team a survey before we started, somewhere in the middle, and then after our trial. So we've spent 6 months trying out the 4-day week, and we wanted to see what worked and what didn't. And then they sent us our survey results. So for our team of 9, the list on the left is things that increased, such as people's satisfaction with time was the #1 increase, and people exercised more and they had more work-family balance. I'll let you take a minute to glance through that. And then we also had some decreases. So work absences due to health, those went way down. Family to work conflict, which means we're arguing with our family about what is more important, getting our work done, or I don't know, taking little Jimmy to soccer. Sleep problems went down. Domestic travel, that's just kind of random that that happened to go down, but people's anxiety went down. So when we looked at the results they sent back to us, it was very obvious that this was helping people, just like with their mental and physical health, and also helping us at work. Does anybody have any like quick questions about anything I've said so far? Feel free to unmute and pop in at any time. One thing that I will say, so I spent a year and a half trying to learn about the 4-day week and if it was reasonable. And I saw study after study say that productivity really declines after you have been working too long. So here's the thing that you can possibly tell your boss. But the idea is people really only work in 20-minute bursts of productivity and up to maybe 5 hours per day. And then after that, you start seeing cognitive decline and your work suffers and you get distracted. It's just a thing that they've shown over and over. So, okay, what is the 4-day week? This is like 1 second to explain this, but the 4-day week is not doing the same amount of work jammed into 4 days. So the pay stays 100% the same. The hours go down to 80%. So we are working on a 32-hour week at my company right now, and everybody's productivity needs to stay at 100%, which we're going to be talking about how on earth you do that. But we definitely made a big point with our team, like, we're not cutting your salaries. We're not switching to the 4-day week because we've run out of work or the company is suffering or we're about to do layoffs or anything like that. The idea is that I think we're going to do better work and be more productive and have less burnout because we work for clients and there's a lot of deadlines and we're juggling a lot of people at once. It's pretty easy just to be like, I'm exhausted now, and then you start producing work that is not your best work. So I really did feel, aside from this being a lovely benefit for the team, that it was going to make our work for our clients better. And we also needed to chat with our clients about this and say, like, you aren't going to see a change because we're going to keep on the schedule that we've always had for you. Like if a project was going to take 4 weeks before the 4-day week, we were still going to have it take 4 weeks after the 4-day week. And what we needed to figure out on our end was how to make that happen, which we're going to chat about. So there were a ton of changes we made. Like one of the things I read when I was looking into this was somebody was talking about if you're like a bicyclist, like a competitive bicyclist, if you looked at every single thing that goes into bicycling and you made each little aspect of it 1% better, you're going to be amazing at winning your bicycle race, right? So we did do tiny little things to almost everything that we did, but there were 3 things that we spent a lot of time on and spent most of our focus. So meetings. Meetings was the biggest one. So if you run a company, you can decide what to do about meetings. If you work for somebody else, you can certainly make suggestions. If you're a freelancer, you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't have meetings because it's just me, but maybe you're meeting with clients, right? So for meetings, we just wanted to make sure we had less meetings. And when we had a meeting, we wanted less people in it because each person in a meeting makes it that much more expensive. And then we wanted meetings to take less time. So like Google might default all of your meetings to an hour, but why not try 45 minutes? Or instead of half an hour, why not try 25 minutes? So we made all kinds of little changes like that. And we would also insist that every meeting had an agenda and usually with a timeline on it. Because if you just go in there not sure exactly what you're doing, it's easy to go on tangents and talk forever or get into a side conversation. But we work to be super focused in our meetings. And one thing that I read that was interesting is that Shopify at one point developed some software on their own for their internal use, where it hooked up to their Google Calendar and it was the meeting cost calculator, and each person had an hourly rate. And so whenever you tried to schedule a meeting, if you added 8 or 9 people to it, it would add up all their hourly rate and like show you how much the meeting was actually going to literally cost you. Like maybe you are right now scheduling a $2,000 meeting and you need to slow down and be like, oh, maybe I could just send somebody an email, or maybe I could just have two people in the meeting and then they'll tell their team or something like that. So we did spend a lot of time thinking about like, what can we do to not sit around in meetings and not spend so much time in meetings. We also have worked on things like maybe have all your meetings on one day. So on the other days, you can really focus on the deep work that you need to be doing. So that's meetings. The next thing we did was keeping everything on scope and on schedule. So we don't really have time to put things off anymore. Here's the sad little pug contemplating his day's work. But this is something we were already pretty good at. So I think this made it easier for us than it might if you are working at an organization, which is maybe a little disorganized, or things go out of scope, or you're having trouble hitting deadlines. I have another talk I like to do about this, about preventing scope creep and setting expectations and staying on schedule. But a really important part for us was just making sure our projects started when they needed to start and ended when they needed to end, and didn't take, like if we plan 40 hours for a project and it takes 60, it's going to be very hard to take Friday off. So it's all about, I guess it's about two things: processes, just like having a really good system on your end, but then anybody else that you work with, such as a client or your other coworkers, you need to set really good expectations about when things are due and when they need to get done, and make sure people have the information that they need. And we're gonna do a little workshop portion of this where we can think about the kinds of things that get us off schedule, or adding scope to a project when we weren't expecting it. But just having everything nailed down makes this achievable. Here's my ducks. These ducks are my pre 4-day week to-do list. Like you're looking at these ducks and it's like, there's too many of them and they're all the same and nothing here is standing out as important. But I think a big thing that we did is just prioritizing what's important. Like you need to know what you need to work on every day and every week. And we need to eliminate wasted time, which is what I'm going to spend the bulk of this time chatting with you about. So part of this for us was personal development. And like, I hesitate to say productivity because I think productivity is getting a bad rap right now, because it seems to be, how can I try to do as much work as possible and like jam it all into my work week and die of a stress heart attack or something. So not that kind of productivity, but more like, how can I make sure I'm working on that 20% that's going to give me 80% of my results, and save time for that stuff, and make sure that I am not, spending extra time in my day that I don't need to. So we're going to talk about wasted time. So this is one of the things the 4-day week group told us. This is how organizations tend to spend their time. So for any average business, that little tiny blue pie slice there is valuable activities, which means like doing the work that makes your business money. And then 35% is unavoidable waste. So we're calling it wasted time. I'm not exactly sure why. If it's unavoidable, I don't know that it's wasted, but this is just stuff that you have to do to keep the business running so you can do that 5% of valuable activities. But then you'll notice the biggest pie slice here is called avoidable waste, and 60% of our time is stuff that we don't actually have to be doing, or that we could be doing much, much more efficiently. So a lot of businesses are thinking like, well, how can we grow? How can we make more money? And they want to grow that 5% of valuable activities. But really the low-hanging fruit here is to get rid of as much of that 60% of avoidable waste. And then you'll find your time is freed up for those valuable activities. So you're not trying to cram more into the pie. You're trying to take away that yellow stuff so you can do the blue stuff. Okay, so this is where we're going to do a little workshop, and we're actually going to do something useful right now for you. So I'm going to describe these categories of waste. They pulled together this info for us. So when we went through with 4-day week global, which I recommend, 'cause it was helpful to have these outside resources. They did do a talk with us where they talked to us about categories of waste. And so I'm going to explain each of these categories and give you an example of something that maybe we found in our business. And then I'm going to leave this slide up and we're going to take 5 minutes to just brainstorm what tasks we have that might fall into some of these categories. So maybe think of like 1 to 5 tasks that feel like they might be wasteful. And then we'll chat about that for a minute and then we'll move on to what to do about them. So one way we can waste our time is by doing too much work or doing the work too early. So sometimes you might check on somebody's work early and then you'll find out they'll make changes and you'll come back and have to repeat it. Or like if you do work with clients like we do, you might get excited about something you're working on and you'll do something extra for them that wasn't like part of the contract or part of the plan. And if we're doing that a bunch of the time, it certainly takes up too much time. So overcomplications is another category of waste. So for us, we used to creating docs that end up unused. So we had a project manager once who was like really into spreadsheets and she would make all these complicated spreadsheets and she'd be spending her time on it. And then our team wouldn't really want to use it. And it was like solving a problem that we didn't have. So just making sure that anytime you're making somebody do something, it's going to be part of that 20% of your really awesome work that gets you the results you want. Another thing for us is we used to use Basecamp as our project management software, and we had to switch because there were like just too many places for people to leave comments. Our clients could comment on a task, they could comment on a message, they could comment on a file, they could comment on the calendar. I don't know, there was also like a chat place, and it was just like there was no way to control it, and it was making it really hard to find the information we needed. Another category of waste is roadblocks or delays. So work that needs multiple sign-offs maybe. Like, do you really need 3 different people to look at this, or could one person do it? For us, we have a full-time e-commerce strategist, and for a while we were having her approve just about everything that we ever designed or created, but she's just one person and we're usually doing maybe 30 projects at a time. So what we did instead is she put together a document of all of her best practices and important things and kind of like a checklist. And so now on our simpler or easier projects, people will just check the checklist rather than getting her involved. And on really complicated things, we'll plan for her to be involved. Another kind of roadblock or delay is sometimes surprise work comes along and you need to adjust your schedule. So that's just another one about where can you adjust your process or set expectations where you don't end up with surprises. One of the funniest ones that I found while we were planning for the 4-day week falls under this overstocking category. So I told you we're working with about 30 clients at a time. Every time we launched a new website, we would have a task for the designer to create portfolio graphics. So like they would show what the homepage looked like and the about page and the product page, and then if there was branding, they would show what we did for that, and they'd get it all sized right and ready to put on the website. But we really didn't put that many things on the website. I think maybe like 1 out of 5 if we're lucky, or maybe 1 out of 10 of those projects we would put on the website. So designers were spending hours and hours like building up this big library of content we were never going to use. And then I'm sure you can probably think of some paperwork in your business that is maybe not necessary, or maybe you file it away and nobody ever looks at it again, like in the history of the world. So why are you spending time doing that? And then related, unnecessary effort. So again, our portfolio is another example. I hired some people to help me add some stuff to the portfolio, and I had to put together information explaining to them where they get all the stuff they need to build a portfolio piece. And it was like everywhere. You had to go in Google Drive, you had to go in Dropbox, you had to look in Slack, you had to ask some people some things, you had to go into our project management software. It was just like so much work to pull together a little bit of info. So figuring out how to put things where they're going to be easy for what you know you're about to do is a great way to save some time. And then we also have like just little things like multiple people looking for the same thing. So if you're for us, if you're going to ask somebody for help on Slack, you like if you're looking at the document they're going to need to look at, you just put the link into Slack so they don't have to spend 10 minutes looking for the document as well. So we try to really help each other out with like little breadcrumb trails. So if you've already figured something out, you share that info and it's not 2 or 3 people trying to figure that out. And then another category of waste is making mistakes or just doing poor work. So one thing about being very rushed is it's easy to make a mistake. And having this 4-day week where you're purposely working on what's most important gives you a little more time to just be in the right headspace to not make as many mistakes. But there's also easy ways to make mistakes where, you know, you just weren't thinking about it right. And then you've messed something up for everybody because they're going back to look at the wrong information that you entered. Or sometimes we just like, especially if you're behind, one of our designers might be trying to put a page together for a client and she's like, oh, I don't think I have the info for this. I wonder if they want it this way or that way. But if you're a bit behind or you weren't prepared, you might just guess one way and then that turns out not to be what they want and you have to redo it. So just a little foresight and planning can help there. Okay, so it helps me to look at the categories. So if you want to take a notepad or pen and paper, whatever your phone, whatever you have, and just think like, what are a few things that I do in my day or week that feel like they're a waste or could be improved upon? And I'm going to try, I've been talking a lot here. I'm going to try and share a little gentle music. And we're going to sit here and contemplate wasteful tasks. Is it happening? All right. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. Okay, that song was about 5 minutes. Um, did anybody come up with a waste a waste task? Where are you wasting time? I'd love to hear from people.
For me, it's
I
one of those ones where it's like someone owns the documents, but you can't edit it. And then, yeah, you have to wait for them to give you access before you can go in there and do stuff.
Oh
Um,
yes, that's a perfect roadblock.
yeah.
That happens to me. I know sometimes somebody makes something just for me and then they send me the link and I have to go ask for access. And then if they're done for work with work for the day, then I can't work on it till the next morning. Anybody else find a place where they get roadblocked or things are overcomplicated at work?
You got some in the chat. Quentin said design when working on a design, designing out pages that don't need a fully realized design. Account login screens or pages that are mostly textual don't need a lot of design. Small
Oh, right.
talk, prepping proposals. I got a few.
Small talk. I love that. Prepping proposals. I know there's ways to make that simpler or to almost automate it or to have a template. One thing that I'll say that we do at Aeolidia is I hate doing the same thing twice. Like if I find myself doing the same thing a second time, I'm like, this is a template now, or this is a form letter, or I never do I want to like do the thing that I already did before. So I'm constantly making templates. I send out form letters, I'll throw in something to make it personal, but if I get asked the same thing 2 or 3 times, I'm like, this is a blog post and I'm linking to it from now on. I found one thing for me while we were taking our thinking time. So we have a newsletter template and I send a newsletter out weekly, but my assistant needs to go in and add our 3 latest blog posts like manually every single time because there isn't a little widget in our software to make that happen automatically. So I think if we could, we're only saving 5 or 6 minutes if I can find a way to automate it, but we do it every single week. So I think it's worth figuring that one out. So for our small talk. So you know what? So for part of small talk, especially if it happens in meetings, we do this thing with our meetings where we have an agenda and we have a number of minutes each thing takes. And we start each meeting with what we call good things, where each person shares one good thing that's happened to them personally or professionally in the last week. But everybody knows they get just like 1 minute or 2 minutes and then we move right along. And the other thing that we do during meetings is we do something called a tangent alert. So if we notice somebody has like gone off on a tangent, it's perfectly acceptable socially in our team to just be like tangent alert. And then we'll maybe like if it's going to be important sometime, we'll make a note of it on the agenda and come back to it. But that is not what this meeting is about. So the next thing is, and this again was guidance from 4-Day Week Global. They told us for every task that we could identify for ourselves or for the whole team or the business, you can look at each one and first ask yourself, why do I do this task? You might find out that like maybe this is something you used to need to do, but doesn't matter anymore, or it's just can be enlightening to figure out why you do the task. And then how do I prevent myself from doing it again? And there's 4 different things you can do. You can eliminate it completely. Maybe we don't need to do it. You can simplify it, like if it's one of those overcomplicated things. You can automate it. There's tons of software out there now that will help your software talk to itself or do special things for you. Or you can delegate it to somebody else. So for me, like if somebody on our leadership team, like if my director of operations is doing something which probably almost anybody can do, it's really a waste of time and money for her to be doing that. And somebody else who has more time and costs less money could do that kind of task and she doesn't have to. So now we'll take another 5 minutes and whatever you wrote down, first just think, why do I do it? And then see if you can eliminate it, simplify it, automate it, or delegate to somebody else. And if you're a freelancer, delegating could be subcontracting out some kind of work or getting yourself a virtual assistant. If you own a business, maybe you have other employees that could help out with some of the work, or maybe you find that everybody's super busy and you might need to hire another person to come in so you have somebody to delegate things to. Um, but obviously, I guess our mindset sometimes is like you want to get all the work done. For my team, a couple people on my team are perfectionists. I would say most of us are not full perfectionists, but we really like getting an A plus, like a lot on everything that we do. So we had to kind of look back at what we're doing and we have to say, okay, what work are we going to keep getting an A plus on? But what work are we actually okay getting a B minus or maybe even a C? Like maybe we're really bad at like archiving documents or something like that. But that is not going to make or break the business. That maybe is something we can just do a bad job on. So simplify might actually be like, I will keep doing this task, but I'm going to quiet quit it. I'm going to put in like the most minimal amount of effort. So I'm gonna do a little song for us again, and we're gonna take another 5 minutes and think like, how could I solve this problem? Okay. The music says we're done. Um, I'm enjoying the chat here. Quentin staring into his soul. That's exciting. I love this one about storing data in a single space versus 20 spreadsheets. Anytime, anytime I find myself looking for or putting information in two different places, I'm like, something's probably wrong here. We got a nice chat here about small talk. So I would love to know if anybody had even the tiniest brainstorm where they can get rid of something that's been bothering them or make something a little bit more efficient. And then we're going to move to the Q&A. So I'll be very happy to take questions. Does anybody think of a way to get something off their plate? Either unmute and tell me or post it in the chat. Either one is fine. For me, we talked to a lot of people during our kind of sales and proposal process, but we have to manually send them the next step and the questionnaire they need and everything. So I started brainstorming ways that we could either have a like an email series go out automatically or a portal they can go to grab what they need so we're not getting it for them. So that's one of the things I'm thinking about. Alana loves the idea of what can I just not do a great job on, but still get done. I know it can be painful. Some people love doing C plus work. For my team, it's like pulling teeth to not get a good grade on something. Um, Another thing that I'll mention, like as I was thinking about this, like I'm sitting here and I'm having a ton of ideas of what I can do for my business. And we've been doing this for a year and a half now. And what I have noticed is that even when you get amazing at this, you're gonna forget to do it and you're gonna fall back into bad habits. So one thing I'm planning with my team right now is every quarter or every 90 days, we're gonna look back at what we learned and how we set our schedules up and like just really good practices for how much time we spend on Slack or like don't have your email open all day every day. Just go look at it 1 to maybe 3 times per day. It's easy to like be very disciplined for the first couple weeks and you're like, I only look at my email after 10 a.m. or whatever. And you start like slipping and forgetting to do that kind of thing. Okay, so this is a quote from one of the designers on my team. She said that work doesn't feel like the biggest thing you do in your life, but rather something significant you do along with other things, which I love. So she was talking about how the 4-day week feels to her now. And she's been doing amazing work and she's caught up on everything all the time and her work is beautiful, but then she gets her 3-day weekend. So I'm just gonna leave this quote up and I'm gonna take any and every question, big, small. I would love to hear from you if you think this would not work for you, because maybe it would. Let's talk about it.
We had some questions in the chat that I just want to call out before they get buried.
Yeah.
One from Debbie. She was asking, does the 32 hours include all work activity, including billable and non-billable hours?
It does. So our 32 hours, we just have an 8-hour day every day. We take a half-hour lunch. We take a couple breaks. That's all included in the 8 hours as well, because you need a break to be able to continue working. We do all our client work in that time, and then we do our internal work in that time as well. And so the admin work is really the stuff that we ended up cutting down on the most. We decreased our meetings, like I said, and if we were doing a bunch of admin work in the back, like those crazy portfolio graphics, and we didn't even realize, like, for me, as the boss, right, I can just be like, let's make sure everybody makes portfolio graphics, and then a year can pass, and then I don't really have a concept of how many they've made and how many have gone on the website. So just checking in with the whole team was another thing that was huge for us. So the designers got together. I have 2 designers, I have 2 developers, and 2 project managers on our full-time team. They each got together to have a meeting amongst themselves about like what is inefficient in design or what doesn't make sense in development or what could we quit wasting time on in project management. And then they would bring that to the whole company. And like I learned stuff that I had no idea was going on. Did you have a couple more, Hannah? I see these ones at the bottom, but you might have some up the top I
I
missed.
have one more that was buried from Naveen. Just wondering a bit more about your tech stack and like how it helps you achieve this like 4-day work week.
Yeah, so this will be different for everybody. I mean, if you run a grocery store, it's not going to be the same as a web design agency. But for us, we do all of our project management in ClickUp. The thing I really like about ClickUp compared to other PM software that we've used is that it's really easy to cross-link things and like share information. Like you just paste a link in and it gives you all the info of the task that you're linking to. There's a lot of nice little shortcuts. Um, and what we try to do, so a bad habit, I don't know if any of you use Slack as part of your workplace, but we use Slack and it's a place where we can all chat and it's our like water cooler or whatever. But we would find sometimes that people would be assigning each other tasks or projects almost in Slack. So you'd be like, hey, could you do this for me? And then it's like, take somebody 20 minutes and it wasn't part of their plan for their day. So we make sure anytime you're giving someone a task, you actually just make them a task in ClickUp. You can put a due date on it or tell them they can move it to any day and you can give them an estimate of how much time they should spend. So it's like there's a little friction there when you're asking somebody to do something for you, which is great, which means you're not just casually interrupting people's days all the time. Um, so we use Slack and we try to not let it derail us. I don't think we spend a ton of time in email. I do because I'm like the outward facing person of the company, but I think within our projects, almost everything is in ClickUp if it's a task or in Slack if it's a question. And so most of my team is not in their inbox all day long, which is great. And then we need to store files remotely and share them with clients. We actually use Dropbox and Google Drive, which has been a source of consternation. It's like that's like a little complicated, but we mostly know what goes in Drive and what goes in Dropbox and how to share it. And then we also have some databases in Notion where we store information. Hopefully that is helpful.
I think those were
So
the
I,
only two buried, so I think we can go in the chat now. If I missed anyone's questions, please feel free to drop them again or send me a message.
yeah,
But we have some at the bottom. I think Bavisha is the first one.
this one
Can
about
you,
cultural implications.
yeah, can you
Okay,
Do you
address?
want me to explain that a little bit, or was it clearer based on the question? Because
I would love for you to explain that.
okay, so a lot of times, depending on the role, for example, content creation, you need quiet, you need a space away, yet, there could be pushback, and I've seen this in a lot of organizations. I can't let you work from home because it sets precedent. I can't let you have a quiet space because it sets precedent. um so there's this whole notion of creating inclusivity, which I don't disagree with at all. That's not what I'm saying. But when you try to build a team and support collaboration and all that, that is the biggest response I get in terms of pushback for why we can't do 4-day weeks or hybrid setups or whatnot. We have to build a cohesive team, and how do you do that when you're only together for X amount of time? So what is your how do I combat that? Because that's been an ongoing discussion I've had with lots of organizations.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's kind of two parts to that, right? There's the working remotely or working from home part, which it sounds like there is definitely some fear or resistance to that. It's like, well, this was actually one of my fears about the 4-day week is I thought, this sounds great. I think it's going to work. But what if we like open up the like Pandora's box and whatever? Like once people have this, they're not going to want to go back. So if we do it and it doesn't work, how are we going to take this away from people? Like they've been having 3-day weekends for 6 months now, and we're going to be like, never mind. So we made a really big deal about calling it a trial. We are like, we are trying this, and we had guidelines. We're like, this is how we know if we did it or not. So we work with a bookkeeping team and they look at our utilization rates, which is the percentage of time everybody is spending on clients, and they look at our profitability. And we also have gotten so organized with ClickUp, our project management software. Everybody on our team tracks time, and they track time to specific clients and parts of projects. So we've been tracking our time for years. So our bookkeeping team could easily look at the time tracking and the utilization. We can tell on every single project, even if we're in the middle of it, if we are above hours or below hours and we have extra time. We can see what our hourly rate is at like every day on every project, which not everybody has got that, but that enabled us to say, hey, as long as profitability stays at this mark and as long as your utilization rate is at what we want it to be, then we know that we've done this. And so we checked in weekly on all those things. We let people know what was working and what wasn't. At the end of 6 months, we felt like it was working, but we weren't certain. So we did another 6-month trial. So we didn't say, okay, hey, this is the new policy. We said, we think this is working. We'd like to improve a few things. We're going to take it another 6 months. We had people sign an agreement each time that we did the 6-month trial where we're like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to try to accomplish. The Friday off for our team is not a right. It's something that you earn every week by staying on task with all of your everything assigned to you in ClickUp, right? So if anybody is not getting their stuff done, it's not just like, okay, enjoy Friday, have a nice 3-day weekend. We'll say you need to stay in on Friday and get your work done. So there's a lot you can do. I think with anything like this, it's just setting expectations at the start. So whatever management is afraid of or anxious about, you can write that into the plan and the contract and tell people about it over and over so they don't feel like, yep, this Friday off is definitely mine forever. They know, like, if I work really hard on this, I might be able to keep this Friday off.
I have one question, just clarifying that salaries weren't reduced by 20% as well, right?
Right. So the model that 4-Day Week Global does is the 100-80-100 model, which is you have 100% of your salary and you do 100% of productivity, not 100% of work, because we learned that a lot of work is not productive, but you stay 100% productive and 80% hours. So it was almost like you got a raise, right? Because you're being paid the same, but you're working less now. And that actually helped my team a lot. There was the year that we did this during the pandemic was actually not our best year financially. So I couldn't give people raises that year, but I was like, hey, you're not getting a raise, but you're getting your Fridays back, which went down pretty well. So I see something here about weekly highlights. Does somebody want to, is this a question or, okay, there's a lot of words here. If Idam would like
Hey,
to
Arianne.
explain, yeah.
Hey, yeah, definitely can dive into that a bit more. For me, I think it was just that some of our executives and CMOs would ask my direct manager for weekly highlights, and it would be kind of spontaneous. I think maybe once or twice during the month. There was nothing kind of set in stone in our calendar. So our managers, my direct manager, would then ask her direct team, including me and some of my other peers, to then submit a list of highlights that they could kind of include in their own. So I just felt like it was kind of out of the blue. There was no sequence to it. And it might have derailed a couple of the projects that I was currently working on, if any. And I felt like there could have been more structure around when we could share highlights, of course, outside of our stand-up calls where we, share what we're working on during the week and kind of report back on progress. I think those highlights could be done in a more organized way, either automating it or we used to use monday.com. So maybe creating a bucket item where we can update, file or add something on that will help share those highlights with executives. But I felt like there could have been a smoother way to let us know, or maybe add that to our calendar so we're not rushing.
I know, I think this falls under the category where I was talking about surprise work, right? You weren't expecting this weekly highlight to happen. Another thing we found with our team, especially around time tracking, is trying to remember at the end of the day, or even worse, at the end of the week, where you spend all your time is almost impossible, but doing it in the moment is easy. So if you knew you'd always be doing weekly highlights, like maybe as you're doing something that's a highlight, you would drop it into the document or whatever. But having people suddenly on Friday try and pull that information together can be super inefficient. Emily asked, what are your thoughts on temporary 4-day work weeks or summer Fridays? I love that. That's a great way to dip your toe, right? And then if you're worried that you might need to take it back or it won't work out, it was just the summer anyway, and people are expecting to go back to work on Fridays in the fall. For my team, we take 2 weeks off every winter already, like our Christmas break, just because we work in e-commerce, so our clients are so busy those last couple weeks of the year and they have no time for us. So that was a place where we were already taking time off, and we had to try to figure out how to adjust our schedules really, like when you look at how many work days we have available in a year now, it's pretty slim because we only have the 4 per week. We take the 2 weeks off, we give people vacation. So one of the things you might look at if you run a business is making sure your PTO policies work, because we used to have an unlimited PTO policy. That just does not work with the 4-day week for us. We also had to look at holidays. There are a lot of holidays on a Monday, and then you're only working 3-day weeks, which is pretty crazy. So most of our holidays, if they fall during the work week, we'll make them up by using that Friday that we would normally have off. That's just what worked for us. Alana says ClickUp is great. Did you take any training on ClickUp? So this is worth talking about. I think one of the reasons this worked really well for my team is we had spent the year before getting super organized, not because we were going to do this, just because we had a project management emergency and we needed to. So we hired ZenPilot to help us set ClickUp up. And I feel like we are so organized with our templates and systems right now that you could practically franchise my business. And when you're that organized, it's a lot easier to make this kind of thing work.
What's Zen Pilot and how long did that take?
ZenPilot is a company that just helps people get set up on ClickUp. That's the main thing that they do. And I'd be happy, anybody here who is in the Growclass group or on LinkedIn with me, if anybody wants a personal introduction, just reach out to me and I'll get you introduced. But yeah, if you work on digital projects with or without clients, ClickUp is pretty amazing. It took us probably a couple months to move, but it's so worth it.
We love ClickUp. The challenge is it was set up without any support. So then we had all these systems that actually were over designed and weren't working for the whole team. So there's a bit of a revolt, half onboarding. So I'm in the process of updating everything now, but I see its potential, especially for time tracking. And
yes, and somebody else is asking, do we do time tracking in ClickUp? We do, and that exports out to a spreadsheet that's automatically updated for us that helps us see if we're on track with projects. Somebody's asking about holiday weeks. I think I might have answered that, but let me know if I didn't. So the thing with our team, so our team is in all different states and a couple in Canada. So we hired an HR professional to help us with our employee handbook. And part of that is she creates supplements for the different states with their different laws and regulations. So you have to make sure if there are any holidays that are required by law, you need to make sure that you're not breaking anybody's state laws when you're setting up your work week. Hi Alex, is asking how clients react. Our clients, I was a little worried. They were so into it for us. So we made sure to explain what was in it for them, which is we told them that we were not going to get burnt out. We weren't going to get exhausted. We were going to be our sharpest and doing our best work. We also told them their timelines weren't going to change and they probably wouldn't notice. So we're like, the only thing you might notice is we're not going to answer your questions on Fridays, but we're going to take care of everything else and be all prepared before the weekend. So we did have one project manager. She would try and sneak in a little work on Fridays. And a couple times she emailed our clients and they wrote her back with like a little verbal slap on the wrist. And they were like, it's your weekend. You can't be writing back to me right now. So I thought that was a really good reaction. I think in general, people enjoy a sane work schedule. Okay, you guys, I think we're just about at the end. I'm gonna throw my contact info in here. This is the screen about what we do. If you know anybody who needs a Shopify website, we're very organized at Aeolidia. We'd love to help them. But here's my contact info. And I'm just going to paste in, I have a link to the blog post, which hopefully we can also send you in a follow-up email that goes into a lot of detail about how we did this. So that's me. The switching to a 4-day week link there is our blog post that goes on and on about how we did it and links to some books and articles that were super helpful.
Oh, this was so great, Arianne. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. It was very, very insightful. Lots of great questions too. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat and unmuting, all that. I appreciate everyone pulling up today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. The session is recorded, so we'll be sharing it in Slack and on email soon. Thanks again, Arianne. This was great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Nice to talk to you all. I hope you get your 3-day weekend soon.
Yeah. Let's go. Take it easy, friends. Bye-bye.